Hello and thanks for staying with Bernama TV. Here are this hour's top stories. France has called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, condemning Israeli airstrikes and the ongoing blockade of humanitarian aid. Also, Pakistan says it has credible intelligence that India intends to launch a military strike within the next 24 to 36 hours. And in today's Point of View segment, HASSAN, a geostrategist at the Nusantara Academy, joins me to discuss what Canada's elections means for global power dynamics. I'm JESSY CHAHAL. You're watching The World on Bernama TV. We begin Bernama World with this. A strike hit the Al-Mawasi displacement camp in Khan Yunis on Wednesday, lighting up the tents in the middle of the night. It came as the UN chief urged world leaders to back a two-state solution ahead of a major peace summit that's happening in June. The war resumed in March. Since October's attack, over 52,000 people in Gaza have been killed, while 24 hostages are still believed to be alive. In the meantime, the death toll in Gaza has now reached 52,365, with more than 117,000 people injured since the war began in October of 2023. In the past 24 hours alone, 51 Palestinians were killed and over 100 injured as Israeli strikes continued. Ceasefire talks are still ongoing. Hamas says there's been little progress, with Israel demanding the group disarm before agreeing to a 6-month ceasefire proposed by Egypt. At the United Nations, France is calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, with its foreign minister condemning Israeli strikes and the ongoing blockade of aid. He highlighted the growing civilian toll and demanded full access for humanitarian relief. France is also pushing for a two-state solution, warning it's at risk. A peace conference with Saudi Arabia is planned for June. Meanwhile, the UN chief says that solution is close to vanishing unless leaders act now.
The world cannot afford to watch.
Moving to Yemen now, a devastating airstrike in the country has reportedly killed 68 people at a detention center for African migrants. The first responder described the horrific aftermath, leaving dismembered bodies and widespread destruction. The scene was overwhelming, with rescuers working to save survivors before recovering remains. This attack is one of the deadliest in the intensified U.S. airstrikes against the Iran-aligned Houthi group, which controls northern Yemen. Next, in Ukraine, Russian drone strikes hit the city of Kharkiv, injuring at least 38 people, including 2 children. According to local officials, several parts of the city center were targeted. Emergency crews worked through the night, pulling people from rubble and battling fires. In a separate attack in Dnipro, 1 person was killed as drones sparked more fires. Both cities have frequent targets in Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine. And here's the latest development on talks to end the Ukraine-Russia war from the State Department.
I do have something I can tell you that the Secretary said to me about the situation just a short time ago, Andrea Mitchell. We are now at a time where concrete proposals need to be delivered by the 2 parties on how to end this conflict. How we proceed from here is a decision that belongs now to the President. If there is not progress, we will step back as mediators in this process.
Bruce cited a statement by the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and was referring to President Donald Trump. Now, in Pakistan, officials say they have credible intelligence that India may launch a military strike within the next 36 hours, using last week's deadly Kashmir attack as a pretext. Islamabad denies any role in the assault that killed 26 people and warns of a decisive response. Both countries have taken aggressive steps. Pakistan says it is on high alert, but insists nuclear weapons would only be used if absolutely necessary.
Involvement in the Pahalgam incident.
In other news, North Korea has test-fired weapons from its new warship, the Choihon class, for the first time. Cruise missiles, anti-air missiles and artillery were launched in a display attended by its leader Kim Jong-un and senior officials. Photos show Kim on board with his daughter as missiles fired up into the sky. The ship is named after a historic anti-Japanese fighter, marking a symbolic moment for Pyongyang. Welcome back. The recent federal election in Canada has stirred global attention, not just for its domestic implications, but for what it signals about the shifting dynamics with the United States. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney's stark warning about the end of an era of open trade and integration with the US underscores a growing sense of geopolitical unease. And as Canada prepares for an uncertain road ahead, many are watching closely to understand what this means for global alliances, trade and regional security. Geostrategist Professor AZMI HASSAN joins us now to explore these developments and its wider impact. Hi, Prof. Thanks for joining us. How do you interpret the results of Canada's latest election, where the Liberals retained power but failed to secure a majority? And what does this say about the political mood in Canada at the moment?
Well, Jessie, as you mentioned a few seconds ago, it's all about Trump. Well, before Trump came into picture 2 months ago about Canada being the 51st state and also trying to annex Canada, I think the Liberal Democrat, Mark Carney party was doomed to fail. But how Mark Carney faced Trump, how he answers to Trump's threat, I think that's what makes his Liberal Democrat win. Even though without a majority, it was quite a surprise. But again, the mood in Canada, they want somebody that can face up Trump. And I think Mark Carney, compared to other leaders, or Conservative Party leaders, which seems to be very close or very favorable to Trump, I think Mark Carney won because of Mr. Trump, Jessie.
Well, Prof, Prime Minister Mark Carney has stated that Canada's traditional relationship with the US is based on open trade and integration, and well, that is quote-unquote over. How significant is this statement in terms of its context of North American geopolitics?
Yes, Jessie, it is very, very significant because Canada and US seem to be like a big brother and small brother, whoever the bigger or the smaller one it is. Their economy is so integrated. Their people-to-people relationship is so integrated. We cannot differentiate whether you are from Canada or you are from the United States. So with Mark Carney being said that, I think it's going to reflect how the world sees United States. But Canada being the nearest, closest neighbor, and I would say they are very interdependent each other, it was very interesting how Mark Carney, which don't have any political experience, navigate Canada in facing Trump. So it will be an example for other nations which are further away from the United States.
Well, Prof, you've just highlighted that relationship between an elder sibling and a younger sibling. With this tiff, so to say, going on, what does this show to the rest of the world? What is it reflective of? What is the messaging to other countries watching?
Well, the simple message that we can derive from Mark Carney winning, even though cannot form a majority government, that when you face Trump face to face, I think the people, in this case the Canadians, like it because they need somebody that can face Trump. So the example or other nations can derive from this particular Canadian election is that they also need a leader that can face Trump, or at least to say that they can negotiate, can talk with Trump. I think that kind of leader is a clear example, not only the Canadian, but other parts of the world that need, at this particular juncture, facing, I would say, Trump fiasco or Trump, how he behaved beyond the normal of a global leader. Jessie?
Mm-hmm. Prof, with President Trump now threatening tariffs and even annexation, what are some of the strategic options that's available to Canada at this point to preserve its sovereignty and its economic stability? It's always been known as a country that was fairly neutral and, of course, world-friendly as well. What options is left for Canada at this point?
Oh, well, I think there's a number of options. One thing that Canada, I think, have a leverage is that United States still depends on Canada, because Canada exports, one example is the most vehicle into United States. So their economy is so interdependent with each other. Whatever Trump said, United States will stand alone, can survive it alone. He just cannot do that. So I think that kind of leverage, being the closest neighbor, being a neighbor that are quite rich compared to maybe Mexico, Jesse, I think that's the kind of leverage that Mark Carney, when negotiate with Trump, can show that the United States basically need Canada at this particular stage, Jesse.
Well, this also somehow signal a shift for Mark Carney and his team. Do you foresee them to pivot perhaps more aggressively towards other global partners? We're looking at examples like the EU or even the Asia-Pacific nations in terms of a response with its relationship or its downward relationship with the US at this point.
Yes, I think not only for Canada, I think for other nations, there are some realignment, shifting, similar to us, Malaysia, JC, we are shifting. We are too dependent on the luxuries of the United States market. We are trying to find new market. And Canada is also doing the same. Pivot to China, in this particular case, a very big market, and also the European and also the African countries where there are huge markets. So not only Canada are realigning, but also other nations. I think 90% of other nations in the world, I think, trying to re-pivot or realign from their too much dependence on the United States, Jesse.
Professor, geostrategist, of course, you see these sort of movements as well happen and you track them closely. What would your 2 cents be on the next steps for Canada?
Well, the next step for Canada is to renegotiate. I think it doesn't make any sense Canada to act like China, where there is a reciprocal tariff. I think Canada does not need to follow China's strategy by putting another reciprocal tariff. But again, being the Prime Minister for the second time, in this case for Mark Carney, try to negotiate with Trump. I think that's the best way because Trump, when you talk to him, when you can make him understand, Mr. Trump understand, you can gain some benefit. So I think the next step for Canada is that do not be so blunt, do not be so direct forward, but talk to Mr. Trump. I think that would be the best option for Canada at this particular juncture.
And with that advice, you believe that there is still space to work out a more clearer picture for their relationship between both countries, between Canada and the US, and that there is still space for adjustment or negotiation, Prof?
Yes, I think similar to us, JC Malaysia, we still have faith in trying to negotiate with the Trump administration. I think Canada being as I said before, we cannot differentiate between Canadian and American. We are very close, interrelated to each other. The faith needs to be there. I think that's the best option for Canada, for Mark Carney to go forward. Don't try to make Canada as your enemy, but as far as possible, try to make Canada that United States can depend on. I think that's the best option that Mark Carney has at this particular time.
But Prof, just for a bit more context as well, we are dealing here with a superpower. And so how does that influence some of the actions that may be taken by Mark Carney or his team?
Yeah, I think when you are dealing with other states, not only a superpower, but they have a president that doesn't care much about what the other worlds are thinking. It's going to be very difficult. Similarly, for us, JC Malaysia, even though we are not satisfied with the 24% tariff, but still we want to negotiate, we want to talk. And Canada cannot be considered as a superpower. But the leverage, the positive point that Canada has is that United States has the best neighbor now, present, and in the future. So I think Canada, without being the superpower as China, I think they can reciprocate with their own tariffs. So in this case, I reiterate again, talk to Mr. Trump, make him some sense. If Zelensky of Ukraine can put some sense on Mr. Trump, towards Mr. Trump, I think Mark Carney, which is much, very acute banker, businessman, I think that he should have any problem in trying to talking to Mr. Trump. Yes, sir.
Professor AZMI Hassan, thanks for weighing in on the shifting dynamics between Canada and the United States. Well, Bernama World will be back right after this break. Welcome back. At a Michigan rally marking his first 100 days in office, President Donald Trump touted his economic achievements, including job growth and revived auto manufacturing, while criticizing Democrats' inflation and Federal Reserve policies. He claimed success with tariffs, especially on China, and vowed to end woke government policies. Well, despite his confident rhetoric, Trump faced declining approval ratings and public concern over inflation and the impact of his aggressive trade strategies. In other news, Brazilian's Foreign Minister Mauro Vieira stated that BRICS members reached consensus on trade and tariff issues despite not issuing a joint communique. He emphasized efforts to reconcile differing positions for a unified declaration at the upcoming July summit. Vieira highlighted Brazil's global diplomatic relationships and commitment to international law. The group expressed concern over economic fragmentation and protectionism amid rising global tensions fueled by new U.S. trade policies under President Donald Trump. Next, a deadly fire ripped through a restaurant in northeastern China yesterday, killing 22 people and injuring 3 others. It broke out just after midday in a busy residential area of Liaoyang City in Liaoning Province. Flames and thick smoke poured from the building as sirens echoed in the background. Emergency crews rushed to the scene. China's president called it a deeply sobering lesson and has urged a full investigation with those responsible to be held accountable. Next, 3 people were killed in a shooting in the Swedish city of Uppsala yesterday. Police say a murder investigation is now underway. Officers were called after people reported hearing gunshots in the city centre, and emergency services rushed to the scene. One suspect shooter is being sought, according to local reports. At this point, no further details have been released, and police have not yet confirmed a motive. In the United States, severe storms tore through parts of Missouri on Tuesday, damaging homes, businesses, and even a small private airport. According to the National Weather Service, a tornado likely hit Fremont Hills, south of Springfield, with winds reaching 90 miles per hour. Tens of thousands lost power as trees came crashing down. One resident said it was hard to see through the fog, but despite the damage, everyone on his street survived. Concurrently, a deadly landslide hit a town in central western Peru on Monday, killing 2 people and affecting hundreds. According to local reports, a glacial lagoon overflowed, flooding the Cascar River and forcing residents to flee their homes. 8 people were injured, and officials confirmed that this is the second overflow in the area this year alone. Officials warned that over 160 lagoons in the region are at risk of overflowing. On another platform, or rather on another front, Meta Platforms has introduced its Llama API, which is aimed at helping businesses easily build AI products using its models. This tool, unveiled at Meta's first AI developer conference, allows developers to integrate Llama with just one line of code. While no pricing details were shared, the API is a limited preview model at this point, with broader release planned. Meta also launched a new AI assistant app and plans to test a paid subscription service soon.
Now start using Llama with one line of code because we're releasing an API.
Next, Vietnam marked the 50th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War with a large-scale military and civilian parade in Ho Chi Minh City, formerly known as Saigon. Thousands gathered at the Bac Dang Wharf, waving flags and singing along to special performances. Former President Nguyen Minh Triet attended the grand ceremony. On April 30th, 1975, North Vietnamese tanks entered the presidential palace, ending the war and reunifying the country under communist rule. Well, that's a wrap for this hour's broadcast. Don't forget to visit Bernama.com and follow us on social media channels on YouTube, X, Instagram and Facebook for the latest in the news. You could also get fresh updates from Bernama Radio at 93.9 FM. This has been The World on Bernama TV. Thanks for watching.